All right, friends, welcome back. So this is number 6, chapter 1. Chapter 1 of child development. So I sort of abruptly ended the previous lecture talking about Pinochet, but I felt like I didn't want to rush it. I wanted to not have to rush this one. So again, Pinochet uh, is the father, if you will, of the theory of cognitive development, and cognitive meaning thinking, right? And his theory argues that or recognizes that as children grow, they develop their ability to think differently, and he breaks it down into 1, 2, 3, 4 different stages. You have the sensory motor, so this is a child up till about 2. Their understanding of the world, their ability to think is only what they can see or taste or touch, right? It's all through their senses. If it's not within their sensory, then it doesn't exist. Then you move to the pre-operational. This is the stage where children learn how to use symbols such as language, gestures. They understand that things mean things, but we call it pre-operational because a child hasn't necessarily figured out, doesn't understand yet how the world works. They know that words mean things, but they don't. I think the example in the textbook is a child doesn't understand that the water may go down the drain, but they're not going to go down the drain. And we see sometimes peculiar behaviors with the use of playing with toys, where they know that that's a symbol, but they don't understand that toy is not like their toy cell phone. They know it. No, that's not a good example. They know it means something, but they don't understand that it can't really call grandma. Okay, so we call it pre-operational, but we're able to understand symbols. Then you move to concrete stage, and what your things say is about 7 to 11. I always remember a story my mom tells when I was in the concrete stage. So what the concrete stage means is that children understand, they're developing a sense of logic. And so at a pre-operational stage, a child wouldn't understand that the same amount of water is in one size cup. But when you get to this stage, you do. You begin to understand that. This is the stage where this is a stage of a child understands the logic of right and wrong, but their thinking is very rigid, and they get black and white, so to speak, but there's no gray. There's no flexibility in their thinking. They know that this is the way you do things. This is how you always do things. So the story my mom will tell is, gosh, when I was a child, my parents had given my mother and father a camper or something, and my parents had sold it or were going to sell it. I don't even remember if all these details are right. But anyway, they were going to do something with it, and we weren't supposed to tell Grandpa. This is what they had done with it. And so we're driving to Grandpa's house, and my mother or my father must have been telling me or saying, "Don't tell Grandpa we did this." And I, having learned that lying was bad, because I learned lying was bad, right? That's logical. You're telling a lie, and I know lying to be bad. Apparently, I got in some argument with them about you can't lie to Grandpa. And my father, I don't remember how that ended, but I remember that vividly, that my parents told me it was okay to lie. That didn't make any sense. But when you get to formal operational thinking, that's your later stages, 12 and above, then you can begin to think sort of abstractly about things. And then you can begin to understand, well, let's see, that is lying, and lying is bad. But in this case, we're trying to cover somebody's feelings, so it's okay. So we get to this ability to think more abstractly. That's the point. That's the different stages of development. So a 12-year-old could not expect a 7-year-old to understand their view of the world, because according to Pinochet, the brain is just not able to do that. And this is what we would call cognitive maturation, right? Okay. One of the other elements, and one of the other elements of Pinochet's theory, he has a very big, very complicated, very complex theory, is he used this concept of schema, that we understand the world by basically we put all of the information about one element of life into boxes, and we learn about dogs, right? And dogs are fluffy, and they have tails, and they bark, and so anything that is fluffy and has tails and barks, we put that in the box of a dog. and then or maybe all of the dogs that my grandmother has are this big, and then I'm out walking around the park and I see a Great Dane, and okay, wait, it's fluffy, it has tail, and it barks, but that doesn't look like the kind of box that I understand to be a dog. So then that would be a schema. Your box is small, fluffy tails. But now you have this new information. What are you going to do with this new information? Are you going to incorporate it into your schema and readjust your model of what a dog looks like? I believe that's what we call assimilation. It gets really abstract. Or are you going to make a new box and say, now we're going to put this version of an animal that's very big, fluffy, and tail into a different box? I'm not going to quiz you on that, but I wanted to introduce Piaget's theory of how children think. Basically, as we develop our understanding of the world, we create a box, and then we have new experiences. What are we going to do with that new experiences? And some kids may put it in some cases you put it in, you assimilate, or you accommodate. Oh my goodness, that is just, like I said, cognitive theory is just not my favorite. It just is, looky here, we got another cognitive theory. This one, though, the usefulness of this theory is a little bit more straightforward. In my other class, I do have a discussion post about this one. I may or may not put that in this class. This guy, and maybe I embrace him more because he's a socioculture, and my background is sociology, which is more culturally based, but Vygotsky's theory is what he talked about is a child's ability, or any of our ability. We have a certain amount of information that we have. So cognition, remember we're talking about thinking. We have a certain amount of information that we have, and we have the potential to know a lot more. But we don't get to, so in the illustration, right? The kid, you see him getting into the water. That's what he's capable of doing. But eventually, he may learn how to swim laps. But he's not just going to go from wading into the water to swimming laps. He has to grow, right? He has to cognitively develop his abilities to get there. And this space here in the middle is what we would call the zone of proximal development. The idea is that what I have the ability to know, what I know now, and what I have the ability to know in the future requires interaction with people. So that's why we put socio in here, social. In order for me to cognitively develop, in order for me to grow in my understanding and my ability in the world, somebody or a culture, a teacher, a school, whatever, helps me get there, right? Helps me get from where I am to where I'm going. And this is what we call scaffolding. So scaffolding, this person here, the parent or the coach or whatever, they're scaffolding this child between what they know now, this is what they know now, and what they're going to know in the future. This is the scaffolding. So a good coach scaffolds by, you have this ability right now, so I'm going to help you get to this next level, and then I'm going to help you get to this next level. That's your zone of development. Your zone of development is the gap between, this is the textbook question, it might be a quiz question. The zone of development is the gap between what you know, this kid here, and what you're capable of knowing. This is the zone. And what she is doing is she is acting as the scaffold to help you get there. So you come into an algebra class. That's why if you take an algebra class, that's why you take your placement tests, right? To figure out what do you know. And your teacher will help scaffold you through your zone of approximate development. So by the time you get to the end of your 16 weeks, you have gotten the skills that you need. I don't know, there's something about this theory that just clicks with me. It's a useful, if you're going to be a teacher, if you're a parent, or if you just want to be a helping professional, to think about the best way for me to help someone is I have to figure out what they already know, and I have to understand, okay, this is where we want to be, but we can't expect a child to get from here to there without little steps along the way. And my job as the teacher, as the parent, as the caregiver is to help them get from here to there. My job is to be the scaffolding to move them along. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and I looks like I only have one theory left in the next slide.